2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so now I can mute myself. I guess even more than muting myself, I should probably just turn the thing off. I was just about to ask, is my microphone working? But obviously it is, because otherwise how would you hear me typing and or talking? Oh, Rarity, I don't want to replace you as my desktop. But part of me wants to put something more apropos as a desktop image. Roleplay. Folder. Characters. Email. No, don't do that. Okay, so what I got to do is find a setup for these windows so that I can see what I want to see, do what I want to do. Boop. It's going to be weird with me seeing the delay, so I might as well... Let me see my dashboard here. Okay, you're on the dashboard, so let's just close that. No reason for me to have my own window open. Where on my dashboard do I see who? There it is. The viewer list. Necesito ver... Ver means watch. No, mirar is watch. Ver is see. Agent Pies, Clackster, Mocha 2007, Wario Land Gold Pyramid. Sweet. Auto host, get 10% growth. I'm not auto hosting. I know nothing about this. I have an excellent bit stream, or bit rate on my stream. And okay, things are looking up Millhouse. Oh, that's what I was watching. I bought lamb for the first time. I've never purchased lamb meat before, and so I love watching Gordon Ramsay's recipes because they're very quick and easy and simple for a lot of things. I'm sure there's plenty of other cooks that are also, you know, quick and easy and simple, but I really dig the Ramster, as we call him. Nobody has ever called him that. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to cook the lamb. The package itself just says sear the lamb and then stick it in an oven, and I can do that. But sometimes you want to get a little fancier. Let's see. Put that down. So, what else? I don't want to unmute myself because that would lead to issues. Okay, so some people are probably wondering that... Does this chat auto-update? I think it does. Test number 2. Where I've been. Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. So where have I been? So, I got married, got pregnant, not myself, and bought a house, and am working on buying a car. So I have been in the incredibly busy, stressful life changes portion of my life. And it has been incredibly busy and stressful, and I've only recently gotten my computer in my office set up in my new house. We had to deal with a couple issues getting the internet to work, and we originally set my office up in the other room and then found out that the furniture doesn't fit very well, and so we had to exchange all the furniture and everything from between the two rooms. I ended up getting what's called a Mocha adapter, and it stands for... I used to know what Mocha stood for. Multimedia over coaxial... multimedia over coax. So essentially what it is you are the house was wired with coax cables in every room. So every room has a cable outlet. And so what we did was the internet comes into the house in the living room with the television and everything. And then it feeds, you feed the Ethernet cable into the Mocha adapter. So the internet comes into the modem and then goes to the router, and it also goes to the Mocha adapter. And then the Mocha adapter converts the Ethernet signal, the Cat5 signal, into a coax signal, and then feeds back through the house to the cable outlets. Now, the problem is, at least right now, every one of the cable outlets goes from the room to a box in my closet in the master bedroom. And they're not connected to each other. So we ended up having to use a connector and find out which one goes from the living room and which one then goes from the closet out to the office. And once we got that connected, the coax signal comes into my office, and then it feeds into another Mocha adapter, which then converts the coax signal back into Ethernet and is then plugged into my computer. So I actually have wired computer, which is great because I wasn't sure over the with the wireless itself, the back end of the house, which is where the office is, gets a very poor signal. Very, very poor signal. Like difficulty loading just text on web pages, kind of difficult, which could be fixed by getting something like a wireless extender. But I wanted, if you can have a hardwired internet signal, why not just do that? So we ended up buying this Mocha adapter, and we might eventually get the other ones hooked up, or we found out that the house also is Cat5 wired. So we might get an electrician to come in, make sure that all the Cat5 is connected, and install some Cat5 outlets in the bedroom and the master bedroom and the office and whatnot, so that you can just plug in an Ethernet cable into the wall and have internet, which would also be nice. But in the meantime, this Mocha adapter is really cool, and I like it because it works pretty well. The one thing I haven't tried yet, which I really should, is playing Path of Exile. See how small that icon is. Because one of my big problems playing Path of Exile before, when I was, I played it a lot when I was in the apartment, because I had my modem was actually right next to my computer, so I had internet right there. But when we moved into the rental house, my modem I was back to a wireless signal, and when you're playing something like Path of Exile where you require internet, you definitely want to have the hard line. So got my Mocha, got my computer set up, have missed thousands of hours, most likely, of YouTube videos that I would like to watch. Occasionally would watch some on my tablet and get it all set up. So, all right. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. Is there a way to change my broadcaster icon from... glad that we agreed purple is fantastic. Absolutely. I don't like... When you normally join a channel, so many people are like red or blue or possibly green, but nobody chooses purple. There's a couple other colors that are nice, but they're a little bit more difficult to... see, and so I don't use those, but definitely the purple text is awesome. Okay, so like I said, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. Otherwise, what are we talking about today? So I would mention that I want to talk about some D&D stuff, and that's because like my brain is on fire with some D&D stuff. Couple things that led to that. One, my new house, which by the way is awesome. Well, let's just start a little bit there. So bought the new house, moved in. My wife, I'm very allergic to grass, so my wife was mowing the lawn and ended up kicking a fire ant nest and got bit by a bunch of fire ants. And she is very allergic to fire ants. So she got covered in all these big red welts all over her legs and whatnot as the ants swarmed her. And so I was out shopping. I was doing grocery shopping and running errands while she was mowing the lawn. And so I get a text message, and she's like, "Fire ant poison now." So I stopped by, got some of this bait stuff that you spread around the mound, and then you water it down. So I came home, we spread the bait, we watered it in, and the ants disappeared for a couple days. And then suddenly, 3 feet away, just on the other side of the bait, the mounds popped up again. Every one of them just moved over. So I went out and I got another thing of the poison, and I spread it again. And then one of the ant nests, which was in the backyard, was close to the patio. And it moved, and they decided to move in. They went inside the house somehow. And so we started noticing it was actually in the nursery where we had all the baby stuff piled up. My wife went in there and found ants crawling all over it and just about, died, like couldn't stand it. It was, when you're pregnant, you get very emotional. And then to see ants crawling on your baby's stuff, like just flipped her shit. And so we ended up like throwing, it was a bunch of bedding and stuff, so I threw it into the washer and ran it on high to kill them. And then we peeled up the carpet, and in the area between the spike strip that holds the carpet down and the wall, that 1 or 2 inches in there, just a line of ants all the way around the room leading out towards the back door. Then we noticed that they were also in our master bathroom, and so we ended up having to call an exterminator to come in, and he actually had to come by twice. Because the day after he sprayed, the ants came. There were even more ants walking around. And we actually saw one was carrying larvae, so they definitely had abandoned their nest, which outside the nests, he soaked them in some kind of special poison thing. And so they were all abandoning the nest, and we saw them inside carrying the larvae, and we're like, oh, hell no. But they had also sprayed inside, but we told them we want them to come back, because now, instead of just crawling around on the floor under the carpet and whatnot, they were coming out of the electrical outlets, and we found them in the master closet, in that cable box where all the coax cables were. They were crawling out of there, so they were now in the walls. And so he came by, and we took the panels off of every outlet, and he sprayed down into every outlet and whatnot. So yeah, they were the worst thing possible. And of course, my wife, her biggest fear in us buying a house was that it would end up being infested with bugs. And so it happened, but in a sense, we made it happen because we decided to try and self-treat the problem rather than getting an actual exterminator in. But since he sprayed the second time, we have not seen a single ant in the house, and I barely see any ants outside the house. So, and as soon as it stops raining, because it's been raining and raining and raining, we have a special bait that we're supposed to spread around the property. But if it rains, it decreases the efficacy by 80%. So we need to wait for it to be some dry weather. And you also actually need to see some ants crawling around because it's a bait, so they need to find it and take it back to the nest with them. And that can keep them under control for a long period of time as well. I'm sure whatever he spread bait around the house, so I'm sure whatever he spread is also, doing some work. But we're definitely having them come out to spray again right before the baby's born so that we don't end up with, ants crawling around with the baby. Okay, so on top of all that, in my house, I have a very large dining room. The thing is 10-something feet wide and 14-something feet long. And so my wife was very interested in having a big table. Where we were before, we had just this little round 4-person table, and that was it. The thing was 4 feet across. It was not a big table at all. And worse, it's a pedestal table. And I don't like pedestal tables because when you lean on a pedestal table, you end up kind of it rocks because instead of having 4 legs supporting it at the corners, it's got 1 or 2 legs in the center. And so you create a bit of a lever using it as a fulcrum anytime that you're leaning on the table. And people lean on tables. It's what happens. So here we have room for an 8-person or 10-person table. And she found on Facebook somebody in Tulsa selling a 8-person table with chairs for like $500. And so we drove over there the other weekend and picked it up. And what's great about it is it's super sturdy. And the chairs are all solid wood and sturdy. The table is solid wood and super sturdy. And so now, potentially, I can have people come over and we can play D&D. And when you have a bunch of D&D people and they got their big stacks of books and they're leaning on it, you know, and you've got the map in the center of the table and someone's like, you know, leaning on the end of the table to look over the map and whatnot, you're not going to end up getting a bunch of wobbly table back and forth. So, plus it's, you know, an 8-seater, so there's plenty of room for all those books and stuff and a normal player group when the DM's taking up like a whole side of the table. So that is cool, and that is something I am considering. Yeah, ours, it's a 6-person table normally, and then you can open it up and put a leaf in. And actually, this particular table, the leaf is part of the table. So like when you open it up, the leaf folds together and then kind of flips down underneath the table, and then you push it back together. And so you don't have to worry about where you're going to store the leaf when you're not using it. So that's kind of cool with ours as well, is it's all one piece. But yeah, we're, for the most part, because we have the chairs, and there's really nowhere to put the extra chairs, we just keep ours as an 8-person table. And there's plenty of room. You don't have to worry about it when you're walking from the through the dining room. It's not like you have to walk around it. My aunt and uncle have a dining room table that seats 8 people, but it barely seats that. All right, so what's my favorite D&D class, says Magnitudinal Wave. My favorite D&D class, the one that I go to over and over again, is kind of difficult. Probably something along the lines of like a fighter or a barbarian or paladin, as far as what I play the most. When it comes to my favorite D&D class, I guess I should say my favorite D&D class has always been the paladin, because I'm you know, I like the whole knight in shining armor kind of thing, and I like that they're specifically meant to fight against evil and whatnot. But generally, like when I play D&D, I usually let everybody else pick whatever class they want, and then I'll fill in whatever the gap is. So I end up playing a lot of clerics and rogues, and other kind of weirder class and weirder classes where like maybe it's a 5-person party and we already have one of each, so that kind of just frees me up to pick whatever. And I really love to play classes that are that help. Despite the fact that I don't like 4th edition D&D really at all as a role-playing game, the Warlord class in 4th edition D&D is just awesome. I loved that I could spend my turn giving another player a chance to make an additional attack. When 4th edition came out, there was a organized play event called Living Forgotten Realms, and essentially you created a character and you'd show up at the game store every week or however often they were running events, and your character would play through adventures and gain experience and stuff, but it was all tracked and all set. And every week, you never knew at my game store who you were going to be at the table with, because sometimes people that you normally play with didn't show up, or sometimes they needed, you know, to switch people around to kind of even out the groups, because everybody especially after the initial couple games when you've got, you know, several levels on your character, you're not going to want to play a lower level different class. You're going to want to play your higher level preferred character. So a warlord, on the other hand, I mean, warlords pretty much fit in everywhere, because all they do is make other players better at the game. And so one of the things that I did, the first warlord I made was kind of cool. Candlejack, and he was more along he did a lot of stuff by himself. And then when we hit the next tier and you had to create a new character to play the first tier adventures again, I created another warlord, but this time my goal was to do as little as possible with my own character. And I did not roll an attack roll for I think like until I was at least second level. I never had to roll my own attack roll because I kept choosing abilities that would allow other people to make attacks or would give bonuses to other people. And I thought that was kind of cool, especially because you're sitting at a table, and there was this one guy who came and he would bring his son, and his son was like maybe 6, 7, no, probably 7 or 8 years old. And so you have this little kid, and he's playing, and his turn comes around, and he gets to roll his die once, and then he misses. And so now he's got to wait for everybody else to take a turn before he gets to roll his die again. So on my turn, I can say, hey, you missed your attack, take another chance at it. And I'll use my Warlord Strike ability to let him make another attack roll. And that just, it increases the fun for everybody at the table when you're able to do that. I'm a little sad that in 5th edition, they gave that ability to the fighter class, but they limit the number of times per day you can use it. And I was so sad, because now it means that only like once or twice or 3 times are you able to let someone else make an attack. Whereas in 4th edition, my Warlord could do it round after round after round because it was an at-will ability. So in that sense, the Warlord is my favorite D&D class, but unfortunately, it only exists in the worst edition of D&D, which was 4th edition. But yeah, like I said, I play a lot of characters like that grant bonuses. I like to play Bards. For that reason as well, because Bards give out, tons of bonuses, and you can set it up to give yourself a bunch of spells that give out bonuses. I'm a little weary about playing like a wizard or a cleric that does that, because there's so much else that they could be doing. Like if you're a cleric and you're you're trying to hand out a bunch of buffs, well, that means that you're not healing, which is a little upsetting. And then you're also not. Clerics are, of course, meant to be melee combat fighters as well. And so you can still get mixed in with melee combat, but then it becomes a question of, well, do you buff yourself or do you buff other people? And if you're buffing other people, then you're not buffing yourself, and you're probably not as effective in combat. So, yeah. Some of my favorite characters that I've ever played have been Bards. One of them was in a game with my cousin. He was shamelessly based on Dr. Facilier from The Princess and the Frog. He was this big bad voodoo daddy, and he had his friends on the other side, and I picked a bunch of he was actually not a buffer. His thing was he was a debuffer. I tried building the opposite character, where I picked all these spells and everything that would give penalties to my opponent. I also did the same thing when I played a witch in a campaign, because witches are all about giving penalties to opponents. And then at a game store when I first moved to Oklahoma, I played the great and powerful Trexler. And I played him for like months before finally someone's like, wait a minute, is that based on the great and powerful Trixie? And I'm like, yes, it is. Magnitudinal Wave has only played 5th edition, currently playing a wizard. Yeah, wizards are fun because they have so many things they can do. The big issue that I have with wizards mostly is that in the early levels, you only have, well, not specifically 5th edition, but earlier editions, you only had like 1 or 2 spells you could cast. And other than casting that spell, you did very little. And so it kind of it was a little bit boring. 5th edition adding in those cantrips, actually 4th edition adding in the cantrips where you can cast this spell every single round, made it a little bit better. But then you run into kind of like the Warlock problem. My friend played a Warlock in 3rd edition when I was playing, I was running the Red Hand of Doom campaign. And he thought it was this super cool class when it first came out, and so he wanted to play one, and I let him play him. And then he was basically saying, over time, it kind of gets boring, because essentially what you do is every round you just shoot your Eldritch Blast, and then you shoot your Eldritch Blast. And then occasionally you use one of your other powers, but it's just essentially an attack roll every single round. It's like playing a fighter, but, at range, and with magic. So I do like some of the changes that 5th edition has done with the spellcasters to make them a little more magic, but it does, in some sense, mean that magic is a little less special. The other thing about old edition versions of the wizard is after you get through those first couple levels, you have more spells, but then it becomes like too many spells. You're always trying to, especially if you're playing a high level wizard, like a 15th level or 17th level wizard. There's like you have all of these spells in your spell book, and you have so many spell slots, but each of them becomes even more valuable because each of the spells is so much more powerful. And you need to make sure, and you have to plan so well ahead what spells you're going to memorize. Especially if you want to be like a utility caster, which is arguably in the like 3rd edition, the most powerful form of wizard are the wizards who don't memorize any spells that really, they don't memorize like fireball and lightning bolt and things like that because they're not the best spells. They're certainly good to roll a bunch of dice and deal a lot of damage. So Matt Flat wants to know about my favorite monster. I have a bunch of favorite monsters. My absolute favorite, #1 monster, is the Charon Crawler. I have loved the Charon Crawler since the very first time I saw it. It was in the 1st edition AD&D handbook. Let me see if I can find the picture. Images.google.com. Charon Crawler. So, if we go back here, we got all these things. So, this is the 2nd edition Charon Crawler, and it looks kind of, it's bug-like and it's creepy, and I totally get it. This is the 3rd edition Charon Crawler, and it's absolutely ugly and stupid, and I hate it. I hate this artwork so much. That doesn't have the bug-like alien appearance that it's supposed to. This, where did it go? There we go. This is the 1st edition AD&D Monster Manual. And this is by far my favorite picture of the Charon Crawler. It's so alien looking and it's so creepy, and they really get the tendrils going. Which I feel like this one, the tendrils are just kind of sticking out. And this one, the tendrils are really stupid looking. I don't like the way that they look. But this one definitely looks like those tendrils are whipping all over the place. I wrote a short story when I was in middle school about a guy hunting down a vampire. And when he went into the tunnels beneath the guy's castle, he ended up getting struck by this. So if you don't know about Charon Crawlers, they're low-level monsters. They're not, I think they're like challenge rating 3 in 3rd edition. And what they have like 8 attacks with their tentacles. And if you get hit by the tentacle, you have to make a saving throw or it will paralyze you. And then once you're paralyzed, it has pincers, which are you can't really see on this picture. And then I guess in like newer versions, they've decided to start making it a mouth with a bunch of teeth, which is not what bugs have. Bugs don't have giant mouths filled with teeth. These are so stupid. I hate this artwork. This one's actually kind of cool, but not as a Charon Crawler. This looks like some kind of Cthulhu monster. But these pincers in there are kind of cool. And so it starts pincering you. And those pincers do like 1d2 damage. They do like nothing in the original. And so in this story, this guy got paralyzed. And the Charon Crawler starts like taking chunks out of his hand and his arm. And they're just like little, the size of a quarter. Just like little inch wide discs of flesh. Over and over and over again until finally he's able to will himself back into fighting condition and stab the thing. But I love the Charon Crawler. Absolutely one of my favorite monsters. I hated when they changed it to this goofy, ugly, stupid looking thing. Just does not look intimidating or alien to me at all. It looks cartoonish. This is kind of cool. I can kind of dig that. I wish the tentacles were longer. But, yeah, that's just a personal preference as far as the appearance goes. So, what is another monster that I really like? I love the gelatinous cube. I spelled gelatinous wrong. There we go. Gelatinous cube. They're stupid. They make no sense, but man, do I love gelatinous cubes. Just these big 10 by 10 by 10 foot cubes of a acidic slime that travels down dungeon hallways. Like, the entire point of a gelatinous cube existing is just a joke, making fun of the fact that you have these big corridors in D&D when you're going through the dungeon. So this, I believe, is the 3rd edition art for it. I can't recall off the top of my head what the 1st edition artwork looked like for the gelatinous cube. This, somewhere in here. No. A lot of people like to make miniatures of the gelatinous cube. Gelatinous cube, AD&D. Let's see if we can get a picture of the 1st edition monster manual. There it is. Yeah, it's just a cube with a skeleton in it. So, oh, someone wrote in this one. So it's an uncommon. There's 1. Armor class is 8. Move 6 inches. 4 hit dice. Doesn't have a lair. Treasure type see below. Number of attacks 1. Damage 2 to 8. So 2d4. And that's a digesting. It's this acidic slime. It also paralyzes. It's very good at surprising people because it's gelatinous cubes. They always show them with like this green-blue kind of color scheme, but they're actually clear. They're supposed to be basically invisible as they're traveling down the hallway at you. So I really like them. I also obviously like the standard... Oh, say hello to Trixie. The standard D&D monsters. Like, I love dragons. I love, like, ogres and ettins and cyclops and giants. Just, big, beefy dudes who are going to ruin your crap. I love the old version of trolls. So let me see if I can pull up a picture of that. Yeah, this is the 1st edition monster manual picture of a troll. It's not that big. Let's see. View image. This thing looks creepy to me. They're very, they're almost skeletal, and they describe them in the monster manual as having like this. If not the monstrous manual, then it was an article in Dragon magazine. But they have like a very rubbery flesh, and so you can bash on them, but it just feels like you're not really doing much to them. And of course, then they regenerate so quickly. This I like as the picture of a troll. I don't like this as far as this being a troll. I definitely like this kind of monster, but that's not what I think of when I think of troll. I think of these things. And again, that's just an issue of myself. But yeah, tell me that this doesn't look super creepy. Like, this scares the crap out of me if this guy was crawling around in the dungeon. And so I get it. This is 3rd edition's picture of the troll, which was really stupid. I didn't like it. The nose in particular is ugly and dumb. These guys are kind of cool. Look at these guys. They know the score. So I like the old school art for some of these monsters, but mostly that's probably because I grew up looking at them. Hey, Wario Land. All right, let's see. I missed some comments here. Playing Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO one, and you can change your class by using a different weapon type as long as you've unlocked the class. I've created a story for my character with different character arcs related to different classes. Well, that's cool. I like games where you kind of get to make up your own story as you go. There is a... Hey, Logan Swanson. There is a game I'm playing right now on my tablet called Buried Borns. I'll type it into the chat because it's not... Buried Borns. I thought for sure that the guy who was making it wanted to call it Buried Bones, because the whole thing is like he calls all of the quote-unquote, like the characters that you create. If you're connected to the internet, you can fight against other characters. It's not like there's another person on the other end choosing their actions, but those characters that die when they're in the dungeon, they can come back to attack you. And I know that they're based on the real people because people have posted screenshots of like a character that they named some weird thing coming back to fight them, and it's the same character. But so I thought it was buried bones because he refers to them as corpses, but no, buried borns, spelled weird. The guy's like the guy who's developing the game is from Japan, and he admits that he doesn't speak English very well, so he has volunteers translating for him. I wonder if you threw fruit into a gelatinous cube if it'd taste like Jell-O. No, I agree with Matt Flat. It would taste like pain because it's paralyzing and it's painful. Also, Jell-O. So Jell-O is a type of gelatin. What's creepy and what I have not done it yet, but man, do I want to try it. Back in the day, there were aspics. So what is an aspic? An aspic is a savory gelatin. So the gelatin itself is like pretty much flavorless. There's not much to it. And so you can either put sugar and fruit flavors and things like that into gelatin, and you get more like what we think of as Jell-O, where it's this sweet dessert. But you can also add stuff like beef flavoring and get a savory gelatin. And there are pictures of people. There are pictures of these things that people have made. So an aspic, where it's filled with like vegetables and meat and eggs and all kinds of creepy stuff. This one looks like it's got shrimp in it or something down below. So I've always kind of wanted to try making an aspic and seeing just how awful it is, because it's funny. But yeah. That one doesn't even look like real, doesn't it? Doesn't it look like some kind of photo that they printed out and then just kind of stretched over a box? And what's the point of having this aspic completely filled with like vegetables and then also serving asparagus on the side? Why do you need a side dish with what is essentially just a bunch of side dishes? I wonder if we have Gallery of Regrettable Food. Yep. Gallery of Regrettable Food is maintained by James Lilex. He wrote this book, The Gallery of Regrettable Food, which I own and I love. And are any of these from the gallery? Yep, here we are, lilex.com. So gross. Apparently a lot of other websites have taken his stuff and stolen it, like BuzzFeed. He also had interior desecrations. James Lilex likes going through all these old books and pulling out like old photos and stuff that are just kind of weird. So are you going to make any more LP or vlog videos? I am hoping to potentially make some more LP or vlog videos, but I really have to get an idea of it's going to be kind of ad lib. My wife is pregnant. We're due at the end of November, so the baby might actually be born on my birthday, which is what I have always wanted. And she is not having a very energetic pregnancy. It's very fatiguing for her. So I basically do all of the chores and I cook and everything like that. So I'm doing a lot of stuff around the house, and I don't really have a lot of time to myself. Only recently this week have I really been on my computer for more than just a moment to check my email. Which, by the way, I have like 200 something emails in one of my email accounts that I haven't even started going through yet. And then of course there's a bunch of stuff like we have doctor's visits and parenting classes, and I've been going to the dentist for some stuff. And so I've got all of this other stuff going on that's eating up my time, and the baby isn't even here yet. So I can't guarantee that I'm going to be coming back and making videos every day or whatnot. But I do hope to make some more videos. Yep, Sir Eldric the Fifth. He will actually have my name. We do know it's a boy. So apparently they can now do genetic testing at 10 weeks of pregnancy, which is just ridiculous because you barely even know you're pregnant by 10 weeks. And they can tell you it tests for a couple different forms of like Down syndrome, but they can also figure out, because apparently some of the baby's DNA gets into the mother's bloodstream. They're able to tell you whether or not the baby's a boy or a girl at that point. So my wife was very interested in knowing. I, at that time, didn't really want to know. I felt it like it was way too early, but found out it was a boy. That has helped with picking out, stuff that we're buying and telling other people that it's a boy so that when they buy gifts and whatnot, it's quote-unquote gender appropriate. But yeah, and everything's been going very well with the baby. Perfectly healthy, perfectly sized. When we went to the initial OB gave us a suspected estimated due date of December 2nd. And then we went to, because my wife has a heart condition, we went to a specialist who did a very high definition ultrasound of the baby. And they estimated the due date at that time to be November 30th. So he's right on track where he needs to be. It's absolutely no abnormalities that we know of yet. 10 fingers, 10 toes, etc. And then, yeah, we'll find out exactly when he wants to be born. But apparently he's a bit of a pain. Keeps my wife up all night by kicking. And then he, like last night, like right now she's in the bedroom, she's sleeping because he woke her up at like 3 a.m. and wouldn't leave her alone. So she didn't get very good sleep last night. Apparently, though, I felt him kick once. Very clearly, he kicked right into my hand. But then after that, apparently every time I put my hand on him, he stops moving. Like he just calms down. So he's a little bit contradictory. So Wario Land wants to know when I got married. I got married in June 25th. We ended up getting married on June 25th. And then we're having... That was a secular ceremony. And come October, we're going to have our Catholic ceremony. So that we'll be actually married. Okay, so there's a lot of good stuff. I'm going to use the restroom, and I shall return in just a moment. In the meantime, I will let you look at some kind of picture. I'm going to make it a dragon, because dragons are so cool. Nice, good old-fashioned D&D style dragon. There you go. Bam! I shall return. Remove this dragon, wizard. Yes, must remove the dragon. I really like this photo. There was a point in time, if I remember correctly here, go here. Was this it? No, not that one. Yes. There's a company that will make custom Nintendo DS covers. And I put this one together, and I thought that would be pretty awesome. But then they won't make them unless you prove that you have the rights to use the image. So that was a little bit upsetting. Hobgoblins are cool because they... Bonk. Oh, Warrior Land Gold Pyramid can transform into a dragon. I've always liked the Hobgoblins because they're more martial. Like, goblins are so small and they're supposed to be, you know, kind of stupid. And kobolds are small and stupid. And orcs are big and powerful, but they're supposed to be very chaotic. Whereas the Hobgoblins are like an organized threat. They form, you know, armies, and they have structure, and they're kind of, you use them like Nazis or something. You can use them as a stand-in for Nazis, which would be fun. Let's see if I missed anything here. How long have we been together? So I met my wife in January of 2016. So we were together for about 18 months when we got married. I'm eating some yogurt. It's pretty good yogurt. Do I still talk or do anything with AdKit? Occasionally. Before I moved, AdKit and I were playing games on the weekend. He works a schedule where he only has every other weekend free, and so every other weekend we were playing like Payday 2 and other games on line. But that was before I moved, because after moving, like I said, I haven't had access to my computer. I haven't had the internet. And I haven't seen him or talked to him since then. So, I will say yes and no. So have you heard of Critical Role, the famous D&D show? I've heard the name, but I have not myself listened to it. So I can't say that I know much about it. Where am I going here? That's that. That's that. Okay, I'm trying to find my windows because everything's kind of set up weird for me. Let's see. Have you ever received the letter I sent? Yes, I have the letter. I don't have a webcam at the moment. I'm still unpacking stuff from my office, and I have not found the webcam. But literally, your letter is sitting here on my desk. I'm holding it right here. In the envelope. It was from, it's sent by airmail, par avion, Royal Mail, and yeah, so I have got the envelope sitting here in front of me. I have not looked at it yet. My wife did, but she did not tell me anything about it. The reason why she opened it up to, I don't know exactly why, but she opened it at some point. And, yeah. I also found out, ow, my wife knows one of the people who subscribe to my channel. I'm not allowed to tell you who, though. That's not going to work. So, yeah, when I find my camera, I will get set up to do the blind reading of your letter, Wario. Wario. Okay, so... getting down to business. D&D style business. Because my brain is on fire. Of course, Logan. I'm sure that you live in Oklahoma. Ow. I'm going to eat a banana, too. Banana and yogurt makes for a delicious and nutritious lunch. I can tell you it's not you, Aggie Lobo. The person that she knows is in Oklahoma. There we go. I know who it is. She recognized the name because I was talking about this person. And then she double-checked and found out, yep, it's the person that she knows. Ooh, this is a firm banana. You bite into it and there's like, Oh, I know who Aggie Lobo is. Aggie Lobo is Little Peterbilt or Big Mac. So, I have had like weird things going through my brain as far as D&D is concerned. If you've ever watched the D&D channel, I'll talk to Matt Flat in a moment. You know that I've done some videos on the city of Trocare. I mentioned like Windhaven. I mentioned the idea of doing like a hex crawl / sandbox game. And those ideas are still there and they're coming back. That's pretty much how all of my creative endeavors work. It comes into my brain. I do a bunch of thinking about it. I maybe write some stuff down and then I lose interest for a while, and then I don't pay attention. Then I come back, I re-go through all the things that I've done, I think of more things, and it's like it's slow going because of that. It's the whole leave off and then come back part that's not as fun. So one of the more recent videos I did was about dragons. And this idea, well, multiple ideas, because that's the other thing that I do that's always a pain in the butt, is I always have multiple ideas of stuff, and I don't want to let go of any of them. So I start trying to like work on all of them at once, and of course that's slow going and painful process. So, for example, the Trocare idea. The original idea... Oh yeah, that's right. We're all staring at rarity still. Which, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we probably want to see more D&D-esque stuff, right? Miscellaneous pictures. Let's look at a miscellaneous D&D picture. There we go. That's a good one. Bam! So yeah, Trocare was originally the original thought that I came up with long time ago was just I wanted to have a ruined city, and you explore the city, and then you manage to find ways to get down beneath the city into the sewers, and then you find out that there's undead wandering in the sewers, and you find out that underneath the sewers there's actually the previous city of Trocare, like an ancient city had sunk into the ground, and they built the new version of Trocare right on top of it. And so you head into ancient Trocare and adventure through that city and then work your way past that, etc., etc. So it was basically what's called a mega dungeon. And that's always been the idea. To have more red dragon pictures. I always have more red dragon pictures. Let's see. I apparently have multiple versions of that same picture. Bam! That dragon's red. You might not believe me, but it's totally true. Alright. You want me to find a picture of Svart? Okay. Svart. Oh, these little blue thingies? I remember this guy. He was in one of the Forgotten Realms monster manuals. Like, I think they called it the Monster Compendium. That's Dobby the House Elf. Yep, there it is. Svart, Mite, Measle, and Synad. Totally look like those guys were ripped off of, like, the Gremlins movie. Obviously, this is a female Zvart. What does this say? Zvart save versus spell 20. Zvart save versus spell 20. Baldur's Gate. Cloud Giant, man. There you go. There's the Zvart. This was probably from the Fiend folio. Played a Flash game Exit Path on my own YouTube channel. I actually did your hard mode challenge. Oh, sweet. I'll have to take a look at that. Alright, let's put that one down. There's our cool dragon. So, what was it? Oh, so Trocare was a mega dungeon. And basically my idea for it was you'd be in some small town and then you would adventure out to find the runes, and then there'd be like these... there would be a group of criminals that were using the runes as a base to raid caravans on the road, and there were these two necromancers, one of which was a cleric and one of which was a wizard, and they had claimed two of the few still standing buildings in the middle of the city, and were adventuring down into the depths to find out about these undead, but they hated each other. And there was a group of orcs coming down from the mountains that were sifting through the northern end of the city looking for buried treasure. And the players would arrive into this scene, and there was no automatic... they didn't have to fight anybody. They could ally with the different people. It would become more difficult because the orcs were raiding some of the stolen goods that the criminals had stolen, and of course the two necromancers hated each other, so if you were allied with one, the other one would be less likely to work with you because why are you working with that jerk, etc. And so I had that idea for a while. Then there was the Sandbox Trocare game. Hello, A Boy and His Turret. Did you bring your turret with you? The Windhaven Sandbox game was the thought of, there's this empire across the sea, they've decided to expand, and so they set out and they land in this new world, and along the way they were supposed to open up they were supposed to have found like a number of colonies, like they sent 3 or 4 sets of ships all at once to go set up a number of colonies, and then a massive storm wrecks most of the ships, and so the remainder band together and found one extra large colony. And the players end up either being there at the beginning or coming in a later colonization ship, and from there they have to set out from this established small colony and explore this world. And one of the big issues with it was I want my idea was that you would explore this world and there wouldn't really be anything left. You would end up finding these abandoned cities and these ruins, and you wouldn't really meet any intelligent races with which to do diplomacy and stuff. It would actually just be these demonic creatures that are roaming around, and so there was automatic hostility with them. And of course you wouldn't share a common language or anything either. The problem with that, though, is it makes it... there's not as much role play to do in that sense, except between the party. So that's good for me, because I'm actually not that great at the whole improvisation role-playing thing in character. That's not where my strength lies. And so having the players talk to each other when they want to just improv some role-play, and then having them deal with me when they want to kill stuff, works out well for me. But it really limits what you're able to do. And so then I was thinking, well, part of my inspiration for that whole thing was the founding of Jamestown. If you're not familiar, when they set out, they established a colony at Jamestown, and the site they chose for Jamestown was specifically James Fort, which was a very defensible location in the Chesapeake Bay. Problem was, when they did it, they sent 30 dudes, none of whom knew how to do anything. They didn't have farmers. They didn't have tradesmen. So they didn't know how to grow their own food or how to build stuff. Yeah, it was on an island, like a small island outcropping, so it was pretty crappy. And actually, they ended up... James Fort. Now, you got to be careful here because there's a James Fort in Scotland or something, too. Okay, here we go. This is a picture. This isn't, obviously not a photograph or something. But this is a picture of James Fort. It was this triangle-shaped enclosure. And one of the things they don't show here, but which they really had, was they dug pits in the ground, just like they dug down a pit and then put like a roof on it. And that was considered like where they could live. It was a real shit show is what it was. And so they dropped them off, and then they were supposed to have a supply ship come in because they didn't know how to grow food or anything, and so a supply fleet was sent out and ended up getting wrecked by a big storm. And so they ended up the ships that had all the food and supplies either sank or got stranded in Bermuda, and the other ships that had all of the additional people showed up. And so suddenly Jamestown had a bunch of extra people, but no food or supplies. Now, the lucky thing is the second group of people that showed up included a bunch of actual tradesmen and people who knew how to farm. But the other problem that was going on at the time was the area of Virginia that they were in was right at the beginning of like the worst drought in 200 years. And so there was no way to grow crops because there just wasn't any rain at the time. And then on top of all of that, the Native American tribes in the area weren't very friendly towards them either. There was a group of tribes that were gathered together. It was the Powhatan Compact or Confederacy or something like that. And they were pretty... what's the word I want? My brain's saying aggressive, but it's not aggressive. But they were inhospitable towards the colonists, obviously. And so, essentially, if the colonists left the fort just even to go over here and chop down some trees, they were getting shot at or murdered or kidnapped, and it was not a good day. It stopped for a while. This is actually where the whole John Smith and Pocahontas thing happened, allegedly. But for sure, while John Smith was in the colony, after he was captured and then set free, there was better relations with the Confederacy. I can't think if Confederacy is the right word for it. But then when John Smith got on a ship and went back to England, everything went to crap again. And without really trying, I mean, this is part of the inspiration, but it wasn't as... it wasn't as explicit as this. I just knew, hey, I want to kind of draw on the experience of Europe coming to the New World and setting up colonies and kind of make a small idea out of that. And then when I was coming up with ideas of what would happen, I'm like, oh, well, obviously a storm would wreck the ships and people would show up and they'd have to build this colony and defend themselves against a completely hostile new land. And then other ships would show up, with more supplies, and that would go on for a short time. And then suddenly the empire back home would get involved in a war back home and decide they're not going to send any more supplies and people to the colony. The only people that they're going to start sending are like prison ships. So, get rid of prisoners, send them to the colony, let them work there. But the problem is you're not sending really enough guards and other people to sustain that. And so it'd be up to the player characters in that area to explore the land and expand the colony and deal with, threats and whatnot. And of course, the ruins of Trocare would be nearby, where there would be a dungeon for them to go into and other stuff. And that's kind of where I'm thinking about right now. If I'm going to spend time making a game for real people to play, that's the stuff that I'm hoping to suss out. Now, the problem is, and this is something that hopefully someone in the chat can help with, but I'm pretty sure nobody's going to be able to. It's pretty much, where should that be set up? So in Pathfinder, there is an adventure path called Kingmaker. And in that adventure path, the players show up in this area called the Riverlands. And in the Riverlands, they are... the Riverlands are in... they're not like a United Kingdom or whatnot. There's a bunch of different factions within the Riverlands. And the players end up carving out a kingdom through the course of the campaign. And there's actually rules in there for building farms and setting up gold mines and fisheries and building a church and all kinds of stuff. And developing the land in the Riverlands into your kingdom and claiming like the abandoned fort that you find out in the wilderness and setting up your not only your party, but also finding NPCs to fill in as the government of your colony. And you get bonuses based on what, which person is in which role. And I like the idea of that, but the question becomes, I have to go back and actually find it because I don't have Kingmaker. My brother did and my friend did, and so I'm somewhat familiar from playing portions of it. But I need to look into the rules for it. Pathfinder released a book called Ultimate Campaign that includes an expanded version of this. And I want to see how much of it is city building versus kingdom building, and where I can mesh the systems together. Because if you decide to start a game like this and have the PCs literally arrive on the first boat, then they're going to be part of the boats land on the shore, and now they need to find a place where they can build a quick defensive structure so that they can protect themselves. And then the PCs can, while the other NPCs actually put boards up and, erect walls of the fort, the PCs can then be the people who then explore the area around it. And that's where you run into the trouble I was talking about earlier, where if you decide that it's just this completely abandoned land where the PCs only have hostile demonic forces that are never going to be allied with them or open to diplomacy, then it's just kind of a slogfest of fighting. Whereas if you do decide to put an existing civilization here, well, then you run the risk of, how is the whole world dangerous for the PCs to wander and explore if they are wandering and exploring through somebody's literal, country and backyard? One of the things I was hoping for with the original idea is that the PCs would go through this landscape and they would discover landmarks and all kinds of stuff, and they would get to name it. Like, if you're the first person to climb this mountain and you name the mountain, then it stays that name. It's like, it's an incentive for the players themselves to explore the map and discover, exploration and discovery. It rewards those activities. Whereas normally D&D rewards killing people because that's how you get experience points. But it's a bit troubling if you do decide to have somebody already living in the land, then you're doing exactly what the European explorers did and discovering stuff that already, people already live there. And it also runs into the risk of, well, if you find this village and you use a spell like Comprehend Languages or something so you can talk to them, well, they can tell you where things are, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose of exploring the land. It also requires you to then also come up with another culture or actually preferably multiple cultures to sprinkle throughout the area that they're exploring, and interacting with people. And so I think what it would require in that sense is developing what's called a points of light setting. And this is something 4th edition made explicit, but has existed in previous editions of the game. And that is, back in the day, like think back to like ancient Greece. You had city-states. So there's Athens, just the city of Athens, and a little bit of the surrounding land that they'll patrol and protect. And then you had Sparta, and you had Thebes, and other such city-states all through that area. And if you aren't in the city, it is wilderness. Nobody's out there patrolling it. Nobody's making sure that roads are staying, in good condition. That's all stuff that happened when the Romans showed up. And so if you're in between Thebes, if you're in between Sparta and Athens, it is no man's land. And that's why it's filled with monsters and nobody really has a good map for it. There might be one road that people will travel back and forth, and everything else is just dangerous wilderness. And that's points of light. There are small areas where things are under control, but outside of that, you don't have international trade. You don't have a bunch of caravans running back and forth constantly. You have, if a caravan's going to go out, it sticks to very well-traveled paths, and it has a bunch of people protecting it, and then that's it. There's no exploration with a caravan. They know right where they're going, essentially. And so you maintain all of this wilderness area in between. So, and then with the city building thing, if you have the PCs, my original idea was to have the colony already founded, and then the PCs are on one of the ships that arrives with new colonists. So each of them, you tell the PCs, each of you needs to have a reason that you left the Empire and decided to strike out in the new world. Like, this is not something that you just do. There has to be some kind of motivation for it. You could be a criminal and you're trying to escape the law, or you could, you could just be an explorer and you really want to explore this new world, or you could be, you could owe a tremendous amount of money to people and so you've left to flee your debts, things like that. And then you would arrive and I would have the colony already basically established. So there'd be a couple, points of interest already within the colony. And I imagined that, since the PCs aren't there themselves, you get to make up that the colony's been there for like a year or 2 years already, and they've built this giant wall encompassing like a good section of land, so that you have near the port itself is where all of the important buildings are, and then there's just this huge section of land that's going to be developed into farmland, and then you have the wall where all of the soldiers who've been sent are now patrolling that wall to keep out the demonic forces that are trying to get in. And then the PCs are the weird, crazy people that decide that they're going to head out of the wall and explore the land around them. And I was going to have, like, originally when they built the colony, there wasn't any danger. And so there was a section of people that headed out and established a smaller colony, like a little bit further inland, where they found very good farmland. And so they were they were building up a farm there to help grow food to support the new colony. And that's when the demons came in and wiped them out. And that's when the wall had to be built. And everybody's a little bit more paranoid about stuff. So there's a bunch of ideas that are there, and they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but they're also not mutually, you can't do all of them. So you have to kind of pick and choose what you want. And if there's something in Kingmaker or the Ultimate Campaign book that would allow the party to literally be able to pick what buildings go into their town, and those then have bonuses and penalties to things. The original idea behind Trocare, there is this concept of... who was it that did it? I think it was a guy who created the campaign called The Western Marches. but it might not have been him. But anyway, he had an open table game so that you didn't always have the same players showing up to play the game. And what you would need to do is, what he would require is all of the party had to be back in town at the end of the night when they stopped playing, so that no matter who showed up the next session, they could all then head out and do the next thing. You weren't allowed to sleep in the dungeon or whatnot because, you know, the next time they ran a game, not everybody who was sleeping in the dungeon would be there. And in exchange for requiring you to be back in town, he basically said, nothing is ever going to happen in town. We're never going to have, like, you're not going to get attacked in town. There's not going to be any danger in town. Danger is out of town. And so at the end of the night, you come back to town, you're perfectly safe. And so that was my original idea, and that's, but being able to build the town from the beginning seems like it would potentially be more interesting for players than arriving at this already established town and then spending all of their time outside of it. So I don't know. I guess it would depend on whether or not the players are interested in the city building and government side of the game, and whether or not they actually like the rules for it. I played with a DM here in Oklahoma who ran a game, and he spent a lot of time building his own system for establishing a town. It was not based on Kingmaker at all. He was doing it all on his own. And every week he would show up and there would be like a set of things that we could choose from. But you can only choose one. Some of them you'll be able to do again the next time. So like you're choosing which building to build. Just because you chose to build a tannery this time doesn't mean that you can't also build a bank next time. But, you know, this week you're building the tannery, so that's what you're building. And then there were random events and other things that happened. And we role-played, you know, the city council helping build the city. And then we also role-played the wider kingdom government. And I remember, like, my character for the kingdom government, which was not my party PC. The PCs were specifically in the city and running the city. These wider government people were just us as players kind of taking on a role as far as the wider government policy. But I decided that my guy was all in favor of lending as much support to our colonies as possible. And it was just fun to roleplay that. And there were, you know, there were some rules about it, but I do know that the guy, when he came in each week, said that he spent hours during the week figuring out what options to give, what bonuses and penalties to give based on what you choose, whether or not you make your die roll or fail your die roll. And it was just a very time-consuming process. Of course, it was a ton of fun, and we all enjoyed it, but I don't necessarily have that much time to come up with my own system from scratch, which is why I'm hoping to find a system pre-made, and why Kingmaker might be it. I've always liked this picture. This could be a dude with just long, flowing, awesome locks, but it's more often, it's more likely a girl. I've always been in favor of art that has, like, girls in real armor. This, I mean, she's wearing a tunic over it, but you can imagine that she's got, like, actual armor on. She's not in the quote-unquote chainmail bikini. What else do we want to see as far as dragon pictures? That's kind of cool. Here we go. Line drawing. Line drawings are fun. People love them. Pop. Okay. So, over the past couple of weeks, I've read a lot of information about what are called hex crawl campaigns. And in a hex crawl campaign, what you do is you have a hex map. The players are privy to, some small part of it. And then they literally walk around the rest of the hex map, which they don't get to see. I should say that. The players are privy to a small section of the map, but they don't see the hexes. You're not supposed to actually show them the hexes, really. Ideally, they just get to see a regular kind of map with a bunch of holes in it. I say holes, where there's one small part they know about and everything else is just unknown, untracked wilderness. And they have to set out and explore, just like you would if you landed on the east coast of the United States back in 1600. You have no idea what anything looks like because nobody from, you know, where you're from has ever been here before. So you set out, you pick a direction, and you start walking and figuring out what's where and exploring the land. And the thing about a hex crawl is you have to, before people start it, you have to create the map. And then you have to populate the map with things for them to encounter. Now, some people actually, when hex crawls have been around since the very earliest version of D&D. Some hex crawls have actual, like, people as an encounter. So they, one example that I've seen is you come across a bard sitting on a rock and there's a bunch of halfling children around him and he's telling them stories. Well, that's great if you enter a hex and you find that, but is he always going to be there? You know, he's not going to be there 100% of the time. And so there's more of a focus on creating locations or landmarks or something for people to find as they travel. And that includes like dungeons and monster lairs and giant rocks that are carved with runes and the world's largest tree and other such stuff. And so the big issue with that is if you're making a hex crawl, you do have to make a big enough map that the players can kind of explore in any direction and, you know, because they get to choose where they're going. But you also don't want to spend so much time building up, you know, a ton of places because there's no guarantee that they're going to actually go find that one. And that's one of the problems is they can explore in a direction and then get off whatever area of map you've already prepped, and now they're in a brand new area, and you have to, you know, put together stuff for them to find there as well. And so it just creates a tremendous amount of work if you're putting a lot of detail into things, which is one of my problems is I'm very detail-oriented, so I want to put a bunch of details into these things. I think I have a map. Where's my map? Maps. Dun, 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 da, da, da. Let's find a map of mine. Dun, 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 dun. Maps. Okay, this doesn't have a hex map on it, but this is a map. And you can see all these things that are on the map. So if you overlaid a hex grid and then the players are wandering around the wilderness, let's just say that they're here in Corflu, the Defender's Shore. So this is where the colony was started. And then they head north. And then they find these mountains and they find this town of Horngate, you know, or they set off into the mountains. Like this one, for the most part, just points out places. But it's an example of a bunch of stuff on a map. And the players kind of have to wander around until they find it. And one of the issues with that, of course, is depending on how big the hexes are here, if the hexes are really small, they're wandering through a lot of wilderness finding nothing. Maybe random encounters, but they're not actually encountering anything. So they're covering miles upon miles a day before finally running, if they're lucky, running into something. So there's a lot of emphasis that every single hex should have something in it, and then you roll randomly to see if the PCs blunder into it. That way, no matter how far they walk, there's a chance every single hex that they run across something. And now, again, that doesn't have to be anything in particular. It could be a landmark, it could be a dungeon, it could be a monster lair, or it could be an encounter. You know, they just run across a monster or people or something. But it's a lot of upfront work. The other thing that is potential is and one of the things I thought about for Windhaven and Trocare was that you would tell them, you know, the people, if the colony's already established and people had already kind of explored the really close to the colony area, then there's already a couple points on the map where the players can go. So they already know that there's that one farming town that was established out where the good soil is. And they know that there's this limestone cavern up by them. And they know that over by the base of that mountain, there's an abandoned city. And that gives them a couple points right off the bat that they can explore. And it helps It doesn't prevent them from just walking off and deciding, well, if everybody's already found those places, then, you know, we're going to go this direction. But it does give you a little bit of structure where you know, they're probably going to go to one of those areas. So you just start prepping a little bit of stuff in each of those areas. Aw, it's a frog. I like frogs. Frogs are kind of cool. Frogs. Yeah, and then of course you run the players into what's called a mega dungeon. So a mega dungeon is a really deep dungeon. There's usually a ton of rooms. There's usually a lot of levels. And it's meant that you can adventure in a mega dungeon for a considerable amount of time. It's not something where you're going to go in, spend, you know, a couple play sessions maybe, and then you're done with it. And so Trocaire is meant to be my mega dungeon. The further you go down, you find out that there's just more and more layers to it, and it connects to other dungeons and stuff like that. So I'm working on that. There's a guy named the Angry DM. Angry DM Mega Dungeon. And I found his website just the other day. And I've been reading through his Angry GM Welcome to the Mega Dungeon series, which most recently, I guess he's gone to like once a month updates or something. No, more recently, more likely than that. But his last update was in July, so it's been a while since we've gotten a post about that. But it started way back in 2016 or even 2015. 2015. And these articles are not short. So if you even look at just the first one, we'll go in here. And there's quite a bit of reading to get through just for one article. So they're very long articles. But I'm going through them and learning some cool stuff about designing mega dungeons in a sense. This guy's only one of the many resources I've looked into. So I definitely would recommend that you read it, but I would definitely not say that it's the be-all and end-all of things, because he does spell out right at the beginning what he's trying to accomplish, and it might not be the same thing that you're trying to accomplish. So he wants to make a dungeon for 5th edition D&D that takes characters from 1st level to 11th level, possibly 12th or 13th level if they get all of the XP and stuff. And he has a certain design ethos that he wants to do with it, which is, you know, he's very clear and upfront about exactly what he's hoping to accomplish. So that's good. All right, I feel like I've been talking for like an hour something straight, so let's see what else we can do. Let's go to here. I haven't even gotten into the dragon stuff yet, but that's why I'm saying, like, there's way too much stuff going on in my brain. That looks... I think I've seen that before. Oh, well. What do we got? Adventure RPG. Oh, I know what we can do. Let's see if this works. I haven't tried this before. This button. Oh, don't tell me that this is going to be in Japonese. Probably do want that last one. Yep. There we go. Let's see if this works. Google syndication and double click should not be required for this to work. Nope, doesn't look like this one's gonna work. Dang it. I tried. Alright, let's go back to my mainstay. Okay. Do this. Do that. I've never played this game. And I have no idea how loud it's going to be. Is it louder than me, or is it an okay volume? When it came to Sir Eldric, I have never played a character called Eldric. I created a couple when I was a kid, and he is a paladin. I ended up using the character that I created as a kid as a template for when I then went and created a mythos behind him. Alright, all rotary hands must point towards the same direction. Left click on a rotary hand. Okay, game volume is low. Oh, you know why the game volume is low? It's because the only way you can get to the game volume is if it's going through my microphone. Well, that's good, because the game volume is literally just some crappy music. Alright, so I'll select this hand. Use the left and right arrow keys or the circular buttons to rotate the hands. Okay. So I'm going to guess that at some point they're going to start moving in concert. Yep. Sync lines sometimes connect rotary hands together. Rotary hands that are directly connected to each other will rotate together. So if I connect this one, I'm rotating all of them at once. And that's not going to work. This will rotate those. And then this will rotate those. Okay. I wonder if there's a way... I don't think it works on this. Settings. Audio. Force microphone to mono. Show only connected devices. Yeah, I'm not seeing in... Oh, what if I do this? That. Oh, I'd have to stop the stream to try doing that. Okay, we're not going to do that right now. There's apparently a way to set the stream to play the audio from the game and my microphone, I think. Well, this is a pain in the butt. Holy crap. Alright, these are off by 1. So I would somehow need to rotate this one quite a bit. So like if I were to do this. So now those are in sync. And these will never be in sync because they're not in sync. There we go. This is a game that is definitely not my normal. Oh, great. Every one of these is going to move the middle one. I can't imagine. I don't even know where to start to think through this. Because you're automatically moving 3 at a time. Okay. I can get 2 of them to line up. That's pretty easy. Oh, that makes sense. Let's try resetting this. If I click on one corner, I can rotate right, and click on the other corner and rotate left, and keep these in place. And then click on this one and go left again. Right, left, right, oops, right, left. Interesting. I don't know how that helps me just yet. I need to get some more movement here, so let's do this. Left, right, left, right, left. No. Yes? Yes, no? Left. I feel like it's not actually going the same amount as I go each direction. This is why I usually pre-play puzzle games before I really play them. Left. They're not moving the same amount. Okay. Oh, I think I see now. I actually have no idea. I am a complete and total liar. This system works, but it rotates this one by 1 each time. I've got almost all of them pointing in the same opposite directions. I'm doing pretty well here. I've got them all in, like, the wrong direction. This is awesome. Alright, you go back. You go back again. Back. 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 Perfect. This is just right. 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 I think. Left. Right. Left. Right. Left. Alright, I've gotten 4 of them into one. So now I just got to find a way to get this one to completely turn around. How do I rotate that one without rotating any of the others? I mean, obviously I have to rotate all of them eventually, but I mean, how do I rotate the one and keep the others the same? I can do whatever I want on this side because they're all in sync. Oh, I'm an idiot. Someone smack me through the computer, please, if you can, if you'd like. Double sync lines force connected rotary hands to rotate twice. So if I go click, 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 click. That's the easiest level on Earth. What? What was... Oh, this looks like some kind of challenge level. Those are all connected? I'm sure that there's a way to think your way through this, but man, is it going to take me a while to figure it out. So let's try something else. Why are idle games so popular? You don't do anything. All right, let's try sliding puzzles. Nothing is blocked. Oh, there it is. Allow. Allow and remember. I don't know when. I guess I must have deleted my Unity cookie somehow. Lower the lights. Let's go level 1. Alright. Interesting. Oh, I see what they're going to make me do. No. Get back over here. There you go. It's an ice slide puzzle. Alright, so now the next question is, can I use the keyboard? I can use the keyboard. Now these early levels are pretty simple because you just follow the pattern. Like, it's just go across the outside walls. See? See how easy this pattern is? He said while taking the wrong route multiple times. Let's see, where do I need to get to? Here, 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 here. Nope, that was the wrong way. Oh, why do I always go the wrong way? Here, 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 here. Plus signs apparently knock you over. Now, this is the type of game that I think is kind of cool. There's no text. It doesn't tell you how to play, and yet it's incredibly easy to figure out what you're doing. Okay, that I gotta click back in the game. Click. What? Why are you not working? There we go. Perfect. I was able to use the keyboard before. There we go. Well, that's obviously not the right way. Okay, how do we figure this one out? So, that doesn't help me. That doesn't help me. None of those helps me. Because it just sends you here. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Didn't know that you could use those multiple times in a row. That makes sense, though. Perfect. And this one is obviously telling you that there's a teleporter. This one. Boom. Boom. Let's see. If I go through there, that's not going to help me. I actually need to get to the top. So you get to the top. No, not that way. This way. Alright, this game's a little bit more my speed. And that speed is slow in the head. This is not gonna... Yeah. Do that, do that, do that, do that. Do I have any old drawings from my past D&D characters? I do not have drawings of my D&D characters. Because I don't draw. Because I'm very bad at drawing. So what I can show you Well, yeah, it's not a drawing. So this is a character that I played very briefly in Oklahoma City. There's a game store on the south side of the city called Game Headquarters or something like that, and they had they have the D&D adventure thing on like Saturdays or something. So what it is it's kind of like that Living Forgotten Realms thing that I mentioned earlier. You show up with a character, you play through these pre-made modules, and you get, you know, experience points and tokens and stuff that are they're controlled by Wizards of the Coast, so they know that players aren't getting like exceptionally powerful things or, you know, bonus XP and things like that. So I showed up to play. I wanted to try the new 5th edition Warlock class, so I made Malchior the Merciless. This particular file is something that I like to make for characters when I play. It started in 4th edition because you had so many things that you needed to keep track of. And as a warlord, I gave bonuses just for existing. So like players would get a bonus on their initiative just because I was standing around. So I made this little cardboard stand. You know, you just fold it in 3 and it'll sit there. And then you print this out on a piece of paper, fold it in half, and you can drape it over the top. And so on the front of it, because there's no bonuses or anything to keep track of here, I put a picture of him and then his name and then like a quote that kind of gets his personality across. So the world is all the richer for having a devil in it, so long as we keep our foot upon his neck. Making reference to the fact that as a warlock, you know, he's made a deal with the devil and he needs to keep him... He benefits as long as he keeps the devil under control. And then this is, that's just inspirational art of him being a total badass. And then that's just another drawing of the face of this guy from the Flash Gordon cartoons. Or not cartoons, but the Flash Gordon series. On top of him, we also had... Do I have them here? I don't think I have them here anymore. I used to have a characters folder that seems to have disappeared. Yep, so it's probably Dexter. Yep. I don't have the ones that I used for 4th edition. Yeah, Ming the Merciless is definitely who that is. But the ones that I made for Candlejack, like on the front, I had the bonuses that everybody had to keep track of. You know, like here, you get +2 to your initiative. And then if you spend your action point, you get, you know, a bonus on your attack and damage roll for whatever action you take when you're using an action point and things like that. And then on the back, I had various sayings that he would give. Because warlords had they would heal you by yelling at you. It was as long as your party member could hear you, you could restore hit points to them. And so I went on to like Full Metal Jacket and other such things and came up with a bunch of insulting / inspiring things for him to say. And I printed those on the back side of the sheet so that they were facing me. So when I went to heal somebody, I could yell out one of those phrases. I had another character named Dexter Tripp, and he was like a tightrope walker acrobat kind of guy. So I made the front of it on either side. It looked like a playbill for like a circus or something. And it would say, you know, the amazing exploits of Dexter Tripp. And in the center, I had a picture of him. And to be fair, let me mention right off that I stole the name of Dexter Tripp from a performer at the Arizona Renaissance Festival, who is a tightrope walker and juggler. I just thought his name was awesome. And, you know, for all of my characters, that's essentially what I did. I wish I could remember her name. My first character was Candlejack, and he was a Fire Genasi warlord. My second character was Wick, who was an Eladrin warlord. And then I sat down at a table where they already had like a warlord and a cleric, and so they needed a different type of character. So I made a wizard, an Eladrin wizard, and it was Wick's sister, and I can't remember her name, and I really wish I still had that information because she was a cool character. She used they had released like this illusion shadow magic kind of thing for 4th edition, and it was ridiculously overpowered. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll just make her. And until they nerfed it, she was ridiculous. Killed people all the time, but I didn't play her very often. I just played her a handful of times because she was not my #1 person. Don't need that. I'm trying to find if I have any other pictures of my characters on this computer, because they were on my old computer before I changed hard drives. But it doesn't look like I have them in here. Oh, here's one. So this is not... Dunk. This is not one of the characters I played, but one I was thinking of playing. I was joining a game at that same game headquarters store, and they wanted like a 5th level Pathfinder character, and I decided I wanted to play either a barbarian or a skald. And skald is a new class that had come out where they combine 2 classes together. So the skald was half barbarian, half bard. And so I was like, oh, dude, I really want a mohawk. Like, I'm thinking to myself, whatever character I'm playing, they need to have a mohawk. And so I'm like, well, here's this. And then there's this guy, and he's kind of cool. And then this one I got, and I was like, I can't really tell if that's a male or a female, and they don't have a mohawk. But I kind of like the idea of the orc and the the spikes and stuff. And then I found this picture, and I'm like, oh, that's definitely my character right there. Because you can't see that picture and not play that character. And so her name was Vilchitsa. And she was a skald with the alternate class feature that she had a totem animal, which was the wolf. And yeah, she was actually pretty cool. And then I used the music. There's a band called In This Moment, and their lead singer is a woman named Maria Brink. And so I used a couple songs from her as the voice of the character. So let's see here. This is Logan Swanson's. I need this. Let's just close that window and move this over. So Togath the Wizard, he's got a gun because he is badass. Is it Drehor or Drehor the Barbarian? Noj the Duke of Dix. Sakaja Penis the Ranger. Swayhammer the Jew. Sabip the Rogue. Yosip the Thief. Tnuk the Necromancer. Slav the Battle Mage. All over the place. The Bard and the Archer are the same. Do you plan to do and roll 20 D&D? I'm thinking that's supposed to say from Trolling Duck, do you plan to do any roll 20 D&D? I have heard of roll 20, but I'm not very familiar with it. The way that I find my images is I literally go to Google Images, and then I'll have an idea for a character. So, for example, let's say I want to play... well, let's look up something that I actually am thinking about, which is the dragon stuff, which I haven't talked about. So I want to play a person who's a descended from dragons. So I'll do something like, I want to play a dragon girl. And then you'll look at photos and try to find ones that are in, that fit with what you're wanting. So like this is kind of cool. A lot of this stuff apparently needs the filter turned on. That's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. A lot of the stuff that I'll end up picking, there's a lot of anime style art, so a lot of it ends up being anime style art. That's kind of cool, but more so for the dragon than the girl, etc. So yeah, I'll literally go through hundreds of photos on Google Images, save a bunch of the ones. Usually what I'll do is I'll open them up and use the view image to open them in a new window. And then let it load, here. And so then I'll end up having, dozens of tabs, and I'll go back through the tabs and, save the ones that I think are worth saving. Some of them will end up being that the pictures are too small. And so then I might go back and do like a search for image kind of deal. And try and, find a larger version, or some of them are pretty low resolution, so I'll try and find a higher resolution version. And then I'll save them into a folder. So, for example, that's kind of like what I did with my Scald. I showed you those 4 images. Those are the only 4 that I needed. But I probably looked through, several dozen pictures on Google Images looking for barbarian, mohawk, things like that, to pull them out. Trying to see if there's any... And there's so many people that do artwork and post their stuff online that it's pretty easy to find something close to, if not perfect, what you want. So, for example, I wanted to play a wizard based on Trixie, and so I found, like, this picture. And, it's more girl than boy, but it's somewhere in the middle there. So, there you go. The Great and Powerful Trixie, Illusionist. My Little Mages Series 2. Simple. And it actually helps a lot now that they have, the people that do all the gender swap photos. So you end up getting people that are the opposite gender of what they normally are. What the heck is this? Un momento. Okay, that's just broken is what that is. Just a bunch of random text. I somehow must have... Sometimes when you save images from websites, the image is not what you're actually saving. And it ruins stuff. One of the other things that I got, I will mention beforehand, I switched this over to the active window, that this is somewhat disturbing, or potentially disturbing, so you might not want to look at it. But this was something that I wanted to have for one of my characters as well, one of these scarification tattoos, where they literally cut the skin out, and then it scars up and leaves an image. The thing is, they only really look good when they're bleeding. I can tell you that from looking at a bunch of pictures of them. Once they scar up, they look pretty stupid. So I had a character that I wanted to play that when he raged, when he did his rage for Barbarian, his scar tattoos would all bleed and they'd look cool. Whereas if he wasn't raging, they wouldn't look as cool. So... yeah, I save... it's harder now that I have the new hard drive because I don't have the hundreds of images that I had on my old hard drive. But I used to save tons and tons of images of just random things. Like my brother had sent it to me, a folder. Oh yeah, that would definitely potentially lead to infection. My brother had sent me a number of folders of just images of RPG characters. A lot of them were pulled straight from like Wizards of the Coast or Paizo's Pathfinder books. And they were just, the straight images from the books. And then a lot of them are just people's characters from Google Images or DeviantArt or wherever you were. And he would just save them. And then eventually, if he needed, inspiration for a character, you just look through your folder of character portraits and then find one and like, yeah, I want to play that character. Or if you're running a game, you have tons of pictures of characters, and in that case, you not only need the cool ones, but you also need just a bunch of random things and, people, barkeeps, tavern owners, what have you. And you just save a bunch of pictures and keep them in a folder, arrange them by, subject. So, for example, I have my Dragonian folder. And So I guess this kind of goes into the dragon thing, so I'll go ahead and just show this. This is one of many photos. So one of the videos that's up on the D&D channel, I talk about the multiple types of dragon games. So one of the ideas is based on Council of Worms from 2nd edition. So Council of Worms was a box set that came out in 2nd edition D&D, and you literally played a dragon in the game. And in addition to playing a dragon, you also had a normal D&D character who was like a vassal or thrall of your dragon. So you could have bigger adventures where you're flying around as an actual dragon, just wrecking stuff. And then other adventures, like when you had to delve down into a dungeon where a dragon's not going to fit, you send your thrall down in there to do your bidding. So that was part of it. And then I thought about, and part of that's because there's a company called Eldric IV is my original username. I had a YouTube channel that was just called Eldric IV that ended up getting deleted because I uploaded like 2 or 3 clips of Family Guy and or King of the Hill. And so they ended up, blocking my channel and deleting everything. And when I restarted it, you can't rename it the exact same thing. So I renamed it SirEldric IV. But I had already had this Twitch account before then as well. So it didn't have the Sir. The Sir only came because of the YouTube issues. So there's a company called Right Publishing. And they have, one of my friends actually founded it, and then ended up actually dying a couple years ago, which, sucked. But he had a Kickstarter for a book called In the Company of Dragons, and it was going to be a way to kind of replay that 2nd edition Council of Worms setting that I was talking about. So it was going to have rules for playing a dragon in Pathfinder. And they had a Kickstarter for it, and I supported the Kickstarter, so I've got that. One of the other ideas is something that goes back, and that's what these photos are going to be. These photos are coming from my Dragonian folder. And I saw, let me find one that's actually related to what I'm thinking here. There we go. This is not the best one, but it's one of them. So somebody online is writing a story, and they're getting people to create illustrations for that story, and this is one of them. I honestly have no idea what the name of that story is or who the artist is for this picture. But all of these pictures, so there's a couple things about them. One, it's obviously a bit of an anime style, but there's a good amount of like detail on things. People aren't just wearing a breastplate. Everything's kind of fancy. All of the people are like, they're drawn to be good looking. Nobody's like ugly or whatnot. Let me see if I can find another one that kind of illustrates the point. Yeah. So, and then here's another one that does pretty much the same thing. So, lots of detail on the armor and stuff, and the people are obviously drawn to be idealized people. So what seeing these pictures, not having any, I saw them on a Google image search. I didn't see the fact that they were related to some fan fiction or something. So I just saw these pictures and I'm like, okay, I already have this idea of people somehow being related to dragons. And then you have these fancy people who are, obviously idealized. And so how about in this world, you have people who are descended from dragons, and they literally are better than regular people. They are a little bit taller, a little bit stronger, a little bit more beautiful, a little bit smarter, a little bit, more capable than regular people. This is actually some weird thing that has come up multiple times in my gaming career. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in a video about Trocare. There was a god that I made up for that world. His name is Horde, and he's the god of nobility, but he's also evil. But he's a god of nobility, and part of the thing is he makes the aristocracy actually better people. There's this, maybe it's because I'm American, but there's this thing about the royal family in England where we're somewhat, obsessed with following them. And for some reason, we think that because they're royals, they're somehow different or special, like that they're not like us regular humans. They're somehow supposedly better. From what I hear, the English the British have a slightly more realistic view of them being just, yes, they're still interesting to follow, but there's absolutely no thought process that they're somehow better than normal people. But my thought process was, well, what if they actually are better? If you are one of the aristocracy, it's because a literal god made you better than normal people, and then you're actually held to his standard. Part of that came from there's a game called Legend of the Five Rings, which is kind of loosely based on Japan and samurai culture. And in one of the clans, the Scorpion clan, you can be sent to train with another clan. So if you're sent to train with the Scorpion, they will train you 6 days out of the 7 days of the week. And they train you exactly the same as they train all the rest of their people. But on the 7th day, you're told it's a day off. All the rest of your classmates do show up that 7th day to learn the special secret Scorpion stuff. And so basically the Scorpion are requiring their people to be even better than anybody else, because they have to put in that one extra day of work. But they're not allowed it's a secret that they show up and do that 7th day of training. Because if the people found out that they had sent, their kid over to you for training and you're not training them fully, then that could be a political issue. So they have to keep it completely secret. And so kind of the idea is people look up to leaders. You look up to the president, you look up to royalty, and you think that they're somehow special. They're somehow, the type of people that are supposed to rise to those positions are supposed to be smart, and they're supposed to be, smarter than normal and more capable than normal and more politically savvy and, one hopes wiser than a normal person. They're supposed to be the cream of the crop. It doesn't always work out that way. Donald Trump, but that's what's supposed to happen. And some people, they'll look at like the office of president or something, and they'll think, well, I wish I should just be president, because obviously they get special treatment, and they're more privileged. But those kinds of people forget that if you're the president or the CEO of a company or otherwise in a position of responsibility, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on you as well. If you remember the Sword of Damocles, ancient story where somebody wanted to be king, they envied the position and power of the king, and so the king invited him to sit in his chair, and the guy gets up and sits in the chair, and then when he looks up, hung above his head by just a tiny thin thread is a sword, point down. So if that thread were to fray or break, that sword would fall right down and kill him. And so it's like, yeah, it seems from the outside to be nice to be king, but the only person who can see that sword hovering above my head is me, because the only way you can see that sword is to sit on the throne. And I've always loved the idea that, yes, I do get, I have certain powers and privileges and wealth that other people don't, but you don't understand the amount of pressure and the amount of, you know, all of the things that I have to take care of on top of it. You know, it's not just a life of wasteful luxury. There's, you know, a ton of stuff that I'm actually doing on top of it. There's a character in my that I once played called his name was Mikhail, and he was an archer who ended up finding a crown and resurrecting the dead god Horde, and creating the kingdom of Horde on Earth once again and bringing him back to power. And one of the things is everybody thinks that he's this evil guy, but he's actually probably one of the best guys ever, because he's literally the only thing standing between Horde and the world. Horde has come back from the dead. He's a little bit insane. He's wanting to, you know, humans can disobey. And Horde believes in a very structured, the aristocracy rule. Everybody else follows what the aristocracy says. So he's like, why even allow there to be chance for rebellion or for them to, you know, say no or whatnot? Let's just kill everybody, raise them all as undead, and they're perfect followers. And Mikhail literally is having to constantly outwit a god and convince him not to do that. So I've always loved that kind of thing. So getting back to the dragon people, let's go ahead and close this one. Go back to this one. There was an idea of, okay, well, adventurers are supposed to be, you know, better than normal people. Pretty much every RPG gives player characters some kind of benefit or bonus that normal people don't have, and that's the reason why they're adventurers. So if the adventurers are part of this ruling class that's descended from dragons and literally are better, faster, stronger than normal people, it kind of explains why they have powers and why they are out adventuring and other people aren't. So what this is, we'll go back to the beginning, is just a list, it's just a grouping of pictures that I found when searching for, like, you know, dragon person or half dragon person or dragon girl or whatnot, you know, depending on what it is. And some of them aren't like exactly what I want. So this one looks like Angelina Jolie holding up a sword, but I do like the, you know, the idea that there's the dragon overlaying the part of her head. This one looks like it's a Ruth Thompson photo. It was just a lady with a dragon. But again, pretty much all of these pictures are going to be beautiful, capable people with or without dragon features, with or without dragons next to them. And then some of them are not as beautiful. This is just one where I was thinking along the lines of maybe some people aren't... maybe they're not necessarily more beautiful, but maybe they are just bigger and stronger. And so, like, this guy's just laying waste to everybody around him because he's just such a dude. Logan Swanson had asked, wouldn't actual adventurers be ugly and or rugged? Yes. In general, and it's a more old school kind of thing. The new school people want, you know, the anime character kind of thing, where they look awesome and they're always awesome. One of the things that I look at is watch an action movie nowadays and see how much damage the main character sustains, and compare that to action movies from like the 70s and the 80s. The one that I really like to point out is Die Hard. In Die Hard, Bruce Willis gets super dirty, super broken. He ends up, you know, with his shoes off, walking on broken glass and bleeding all over the place. Like, watch Rocky. Rocky gets the crap beat out of him, you know, and he really gets bloodied and bruised and dirty. But he manages to come through in the end. Whereas nowadays, when you watch a lot of these action style movies, you barely get injured, let alone get, you know, completely destroyed and manage to make it through the other end in one piece. So definitely old school D&D was more about surviving. It was, were you smart enough and skillful enough to get your character to survive the dungeon? Whereas now there's so many things that you get. The game is much more, D&D and Pathfinder are much more emphasized on what kind of powers do you have and what kind of special skills, and making sure that every single level you get extra bonuses and whatnot. I agree it can be boring if you gain a level and nothing changes about your character, other than maybe your hit point total. But that's kind of the old school way is, yes, the fact that this number is a 7 instead of a 6 for my level tells you that I survived and I'm capable. Lady with a dragon. That looks like just the least comfortable way to sit. I can't imagine that rock outcropping is a comfortable seat. But I really like the dragon, that kind of camo look on its wings and the pebbly texture to its scales. I very much like the dragon in this photo. One of the thoughts, like I said, the original Council of Worms, you had the human-style adventurer and the dragon. And so some of these photos are people with dragons. So, you know, to kind of represent that dynamic. Here's a girl with a flaming dragon, which was kind of cool. I like the sort of abstractness of the composition here. But this is more along the lines of like a fancier superpower-based, you know, anime style. Here's just, you know, really fancy-looking dude. Again, fancy, idealistic people. That one we already saw. Anime dude, Saber of Black, Japanese text. This one's going back more towards the previous one where I said the guy's kind of ugly, but he's just a bigger, better, awesome dude. So here, you know, he's killed a bunch of people. And then you maybe not notice it at first, but there's this dragon shape in the flames in the background. Marth from Fire Emblem. Man, my brain's not working. And then this was more along the lines of another idea I had, which was people are descended from dragons, but they're actually able to undergo what would be called apodracosis, which is a fancy Greek word that I made up. But you would, through rituals of some sort or through gaining levels, you would actually start manifesting draconic features. And you could view that as being, like within the game world, if your whole culture is descended from dragons, people who start to actually physically manifest wings and scales and horns and claws and things could be considered like the best of the best. Like they have the strongest bloodline to the point where they're actually physically manifesting these abilities. Or you could see it the other way and say they they're trying too hard. They're adopting these draconic features, and it's kind of like a blasphemy. Like, you're not a real dragon. Yes, we're descended from them, but for you to, you know, co-opt these draconic features is a form of blasphemy or sacrilege. So it could go either way. One thing that's weird about this is her arm here, I guess she's got it back or something, but it just looks really short. Like she has just this tiny stump of an arm. This one I think is a League of Legends character. But I just thought, you know, the artwork works and it's got a dragon in it. Japanese lady or Chinese lady with a dragon in the background. This one, I can't remember where it comes from, but I really liked this particular picture. I don't know why. Another dragon girl. One from that original people, the original one. She even has, like, she has actual wings. So it fits. That's why I'm saying, like, whoever drew this stuff, I really like their stuff for this idea. Another dragon girl. This one looks more like an adventurer kind of deal. This one's more serpentine, like he's even further along the apodracosis. But, you know, it's weird that he's got a snake tail instead of like a dragon body. Dude. This guy again. Just some lady with a dragon in the background, which you can barely make out. So yeah, there's a bunch of these. Well, and now it won't. won't go forward anymore. And so I was considering playing that kind of game, where you are one of these Dragonians, and there's multiple ways. Like everything I've ever done, there's always multiple ways for it to work. And so, like we said, it could be that you gain treasure and experience, and it's very important that you need it treasure because, you know, dragons love treasure. And by gathering up a horde, you actually start transforming into a dragon. And in a game like that, you would start it right at the beginning. So everybody's like descended from dragons, and then what you would want, kind of like a Pathfinder style game, every level that they gain, they get to pick like some kind of draconic power to add to their character. So they're gaining claws or a breath weapon or scales that give them natural armor or resistance to energy types or immunity to sleep spells and things like that. And, you know, a bunch of powers that aren't just straight up normal D&D style dragon stuff. And each level, you know, they're picking something off the list so that they become more and more draconic. The fun thing about that game is each player gets to choose how their character transforms into a dragon. You know, in what order they're going to pick their particular abilities, whether they're going to focus on a bunch of armor and claws and stuff, or they're going to focus more on the magical powers, or they're going to focus on breath weapons, etc. The problem with a game like that is it's much more difficult. Well, you have to come up with all the powers, and then you should somewhat try to balance them. Because if someone's choosing immunity to sleep spells and the other person's choosing a breath weapon, you know, the person with the breath weapon constantly breathing fire on enemies is going to seem a little bit more exciting of a character to play than the other one. So you want to hopefully get them balanced, and that's just a lot of upfront work. This one's kind of weird. I don't know if that's a boy or a girl. There we go. Get some water in me. Another one. I'm not sure what this is, but I mean, it's definitely an anime. I'd watch it. Another idea I had, along with that, is actually that the people who are descended from dragons... That's a girl? Okay. I'll trust you, Logan. That's definitely a girl. The other one is... Oh, my brain is not working. The characters are like children, descended from these dragon people. These dragon people, when they want to have a kid, they literally like construct an egg out of gold and jewels, and then they manage, and then, well, actually, there's a different ways of doing it. One thought I had is actually like that the mother would have to, when they're about to lay the egg, they would have to swallow a, you know, gold or jewels or something, which then gets imparted into the egg and helps determine what type of dragon child is born. And then these dragon children are sent through a magical portal to potentially other worlds. They actually don't know if it just teleports them to a different part of their world or if it's to a different dimension where the dragons used to live. But everywhere that they're sent, there's no dragons to be found. So they might be they feel like the dragons are now extinct, or that they've, you know, left. All the dragons got up and went somewhere. And so they feel like they're the only dragons left, even though they're human-looking people. And so they send their kids out, and one of the things that the kids have to do is they have to explore one of these places where a dragon used to live and find treasure. Because each, you know, they're dragons, so they have to have a horde. And that doesn't matter whether or not they transform into dragons themselves. And in fact, in this kind of thing, they may or may not. It can go either way. But definitely the emphasis of the adventure in that would be you need to find treasure. A lot of D&D, there's emphasis on saving the world or well, actually, it's usually a lot of saving the world or killing a bunch of stuff. But in this case, it would be actually accumulating treasure would be the way that you would level up. And I kind of like the idea of that. And then the fact that you're going through a magic portal to do it just allows you to mix up all the different places that they're gonna be. I had written somewhere, I have a sheet of paper where I wrote down a lot of ideas for places where dragons used to live. You know, castles in the clouds and inside volcanoes and underneath ice at the Arctic Circle and whatnot. There's the Dragon Emperor. A vial of dragon's blood. And then, I don't know what this League of Angels thing was. I guess it was some kind of Chinese or Korean MMO. But I found a lot of concept art for them. This is one of the pieces. Once again, it's just pretty people in fancy clothes. This is definitely from a game called Exalted, which I've never played. But I really liked this character. But again, just kind of like fancy clothes and fancy people. There's like an evil dragon lady. She's very intense. Another one with a dragon mask on. This is definitely some kind of Wizards of the Coast or Pathfinder artwork. Another fancy dragon lady. So there's a bunch of pictures in here. I actually will say, when it comes to the idea of sending like the dragon kids out, I have a much more Dragon Ball, the original Dragon Ball with like the short little Goku and Krillin style. Like that's what I see in my head. Or something like the very early episodes of Naruto where they show them as like little kids. Like, I see that kind of thing, and then I imagine them, like, blowing, you know, doing the fire jutsu kind of deal, but blowing fire out of their mouth because they've leveled up their ability to breathe fire. This one, oh my gosh, this one was always creeping me out because these guys have the exact same face. Like, I don't know if they're intended to be twins or if the person who drew it just can only draw one face. And then looking at the name, it's hard to see here. But I don't know if that's Sam Lili or Sam Liu. There's that. You might notice that this photo is this photo, except somebody duplicated it and changed the coloring. There's that same character. Again, I have no idea who this is. I just know that she's from the game Exalted. This one's definitely a character from Legend of the Five Rings. She's actually a member of the Phoenix Clan, my favorite clan. AEG is Alderac Entertainment Group. They are the people who published the Legend of the Five Rings. I have never played Legend of the Five Rings, but oh my gosh, I own like a dozen of their books because they're so much fun to read. Little dragon kid. Big dude with, at first glance, looks like a sword through his chest. That sword is gigantic and ridiculous. That's the same character. That's also the same character. Like there's a lot of these pictures of that same lady from Exalted. This is also her from Exalted. This is some MMO stuff again, which might be that League of Angels thing. All right, let's see what we got here. Hey. It's a picture of me. I wish I had a mustache that awesome. My beard grows kind of like this, where it just kind of gets bushy. Like it gets curled and bushy around the edges. Instead of growing like long, which is, I kind of wish it would just grow long because then I could do some fancy stuff. But yeah, mine grows like this. And I really wish I had a mustache that came out like that. But mine, the ends, they just drop straight down Like, I don't know if you're allowed to call it this, but is it a Fu Manchu mustache? Yeah. My mustache does this. It just kind of grows straight down like that on either side. That is exactly how my mustache grows. It's not thin like this one. It's thicker like this dude's. Definitely a Hulk Hogan handlebar style. But yeah, I kind of wish I had like that nice German Scandinavian style because I'm descended from Germans and Scandinavians, so you'd think that that would work. More people. Fancy lady. Other fancy lady. Lots of fancy ladies. Very intense fancy lady. Yeah, I could use mustache wax. I actually kind of know where to get mustache wax from, but I've never... What do we got here? Mrs. R. Sir Knight Lord Lady Fairy Prince Kentucky Erie Flying Rock Monk blah 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 blah. There is a game where I could play this character, but this is not it. He's a barbarian. I don't like that mustache. I feel like if you have this Three Musketeers style mustache and a little tiny goatee looking thing, that you really need to have a sword. Because it's just, that's what they do. That's a badass picture. Little girl with her dragon. So. Yep. Captain Richard Ravager III. Cohen the Barbarian. I guess I might as well show you. Cohen the Barbarian. Whoops. Need to be able to type. Cohen the Barbarian. You are truly a god among men. If you've never read Terry Pratchett's Discworld series, you have to read those books. Cohen the Barbarian is just... He acts exactly like Conan the Barbarian, but he's 80-something years old. He just runs around doing barbarian things, but he's this tremendously old dude. You can't see, but all the other barbarians with him are also super old. Holding his back. One of the other ones that's kind of fun for that exact same thing is Joe Abercrombie wrote a book called, let's see if I can find it, Joe Abercrombie. I really love Joe Abercrombie's fiction. Dun, 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 dun. Books. So... he has what's called the First Law trilogy, which is The Blade Itself, Before They Are Hanged, and The Last Argument of Kings. The Blade Itself was an awesome book. I read it, and I left a review on YouTube, which I don't know if it's up anymore. But I basically said, wow, this is really cool. There's some, there's some violence in the book, but there's like no sex and no profanity. And then immediately, like, the next book starts off with a bunch of sex and profanity. So I'm like, well, crap. The Heroes, I believe. So in addition to the trilogy called the First Law trilogy, there's books that are set within that world. And so one of them is called Best Served Cold, which is an interesting book, and I enjoyed it. Another one is called The Heroes, and that's the one that I'm talking about. Some of the characters that are in the First Law trilogy show up in The Heroes, and time has gone on since then. And so they're older. And like there's a scene where they talk about how the main guy in charge of the barbarians is like, he's an old man and he can't pee. So he's like trying to pee before the final battle happens. And he's having a tough time of it. And then the last one's called Red Country, which is also an interesting one. Pretty much every book I've read by him is cool. He had a set of ones called the Shattered Sea, and they all have, they're called Half a King, Half the World, and Half a War. Those are apparently for kids, like teenagers or whatnot. And from what I've heard, they're not as good, because they're too based in reality, I guess. I'm not quite sure. And now apparently he's got a brand new one that's coming out soon. It's a short fiction collection, so I'll have to look into that. I really like that guy. Anyway, this has been fun. One of the things that I'm going to be doing is working on writing out a list of all the ideas that I have, just in a list format, for populating a hex crawl, so that I can at least look at all the things that I've got on my docket, and then I can just use Hexographer. I'm going to open up Worldographer. Let's show you Worldographer. So Hexographer is this awesome program. It's written in Java, I guess, that was... it's been around for a while, and it allows you to make hex maps. And there were some limitations and whatnot, and they've constantly been updating it, and I purchased a license for it. And in addition to the Hexographer, they also made Cityographer, which randomly generates cities. But you can also just... Hexographer, Cityographer, and Dungeonographer. They can randomly generate maps, or you can use them to design maps, and it's just an art program in a sense. So I purchased a license for each of them. But then they had a Kickstarter for Hexographer 2, which is called Worldographer. So if we go in here, we go to New. And what you have... So you can choose whether the hexes are where the columns are in alignment or where the rows are in alignment. So I'm going to choose rows. Map projection, you can have it flat or icosahedral. We'll just go with flat. We'll make it a 100 by... Well, let's make it a 125 by 100. There we go. So then you can choose how big you want the pixels to show up on the... how big you want the hexes to be. So then you can look at it from a world view, continent view, or kingdom view. Doesn't matter. And then you can choose to generate the whole thing as one terrain, which is what you could do if you were going to create like some islands. Just generate an entire ocean where it's just water and then start making your own islands in it. But in this case, we're going to actually have it generate terrain. We're going to say we're generating a world. And I'm not going to mess with any of these. We're just going to say everything is what it is. Let's generate a map. And so here you go. This is the full view of the world that it generated. It's kind of weird when it's got the ocean kind of evaporating like this. But what you can... Wait a minute, what's the problem here? Oh, there we go. You can then click over here and move around and see what it's generated. So... what you then do after you use it to randomly generate one is you can get some of these water spots like this. You can either keep them as lakes or you can delete them and, you know, put something else in here. And then, like, if you're looking up here, these are volcanoes. So that's a volcano, that's a volcano. And then as you're going through, like, this is forest, hills, mountains, volcano, desert, / beaches. These are, I think, rainforest style mountains and hills. This is a rainforest. I'm trying to see if I can find a swamp. Because if it's not a rainforest, then the other option is it's a swamp. Okay, that's a swamp. This little thing right there. And then, yeah, once you've done the map, so then you move over here, and you can change the hexes that you're doing. And then you can add features. So like here's a castle. And so I can choose this castle, and bam, there's a castle. And then if I want something else, like if I know that there's a monster that patrols this area, bam, there's a monster. And so then you can place your own icons all across it. And then like here's the special tree that's located in this hex, etc., etc. And there's all kinds of different icons that come as part of it. And then there are other ones, I know for the original hexographer, because this worldographer, it's still in development. You can see that we're at version 0.84. They haven't finished it yet. But you can, on the old hexographer, people have recreated like the original icons that you can find back in old school D&D books and use those, you know, import those into the program. And then, so yeah, if our guys are over here and they've created Jamestown, you know, here's Fort Jamestown, and then there's the Powhatan, got them surrounded with the various whatnots. So, and then what would happen is when the players are looking at this map, they know where, you know, their home base is, obviously. First of all, the players, like I said, you shouldn't show the players necessarily a hex map. The problem with showing them the hexes is they immediately start thinking in hexes. You want them to just think like it's a normal map. But, and then you place, you know, show them the things that, that they know where it is. And then you, as the DM, track their movement on the hex map to keep track of where they are. And they have to roll certain, you know, survival or orienteering kind of rolls to figure out if they are getting lost or not. Particularly difficult if you're traveling in mountains or through a forest and you can't really see where the position of the sun is, or you're kind of having to twist and turn constantly to get around obstacles. You can very quickly lose your orientation and start heading in a direction that you didn't originally intend to head into. I know this from real life. It doesn't, sometimes when I first heard it, it didn't sound like it was possible. And then I've managed to do it in a neighborhood with a street to go the wrong way. And depending on where you live, like when I lived in Erie, I went to work one way and I came home a different way. And so I wasn't driving back and forth on the same street. And so one day I ended up driving down this street and everything looked weird. And then suddenly I saw places that are familiar and I'm like, oh, that's the street that I drive to work every single day. I'm just going the opposite direction. So I totally get that it's possible to get lost like that. So there's this grid where it actually just fills in all of the hexes for you so that you can actually see them, you know, better. I guess that's more of an issue if you're putting more free-form kind of stuff on there, because otherwise it's pretty obvious the other way. And then numbering, which is important. Now this one's kind of ugly because the map is so huge. But each of the hexes has a number, and in this case it's numbering them in a coordinate. So it's telling you this is column 70, row 62. So, you know, all of these in this row are going to be 62, and then it's just going to go 70, 71, 72, 73, etc., etc., etc. You can also change, I believe, how it's numbered. Oops, it's opening up on the other screen here. So you can change it to what do I want? Oh, I guess this only does one way or the other. But yeah, there's so many Native Americans all over. They pretty much own this land. Gonna have a lot of work cut out for you guys. I keep thinking that you can move the map over here, but you have to use the right button to move the map, not the left button. That's what the problem is. So yeah, I was thinking about using this to generate a map and then to place things on the map. But the first thing I have to do is, of course, get a list of ideas to place on the map. And then you basically generate a map, you know, as many times as you need to find a map that you think works. And then obviously you can change whatever you want. You're not beholden to the map as generated. So working on that. And the idea, like, the dragon thing doesn't have to not be part of it. You can make the PCs dragon people from the Dragon Empire setting up a colony. Or they can encounter the dragon people as they're wandering around. And if they make allies with the dragon people, then you can have dragon people PCs, you know, in the future, etc., etc. So how far does one hex simulate? So the hexes can be, depending on it, they're as big as you want them to be, essentially. The classic idea is you use 6-mile hexes, which are 6 miles across from point to point. Hex crawling scale. So when you're doing big world maps, potentially, you use 24 miles per hex, and then within that hex you break it down into 6-mile hexes. And the part of the reason why is 6-mile hexes are really easy to break down as far as distances from one spot to the next. So that 6 miles is from flat side to the opposite flat side. And if that's 6 miles, then going from corner to corner across, like, let's zoom in on one of these. All right, let's do, yeah, okay, stop it. Come here. Wait, right click is also putting down features? I don't want right click to put down features. Stop it. Okay. There we go. Anyway, so here's a hex. If you're going from flat to flat, no matter which flats you're doing, despite the fact that this looks stretched out and not even, these hexes are, of course, regular hexes. So it's the same distance from each flat to flat. They are 6 miles across, right? You can change it so that it actually looks exactly regular by changing the pixel measurements here with the hex width and the hex height. So if those are 6 miles, then from point to point is 7 miles, which also means that when you're moving from, if you're moving along an edge, it's 3.5 miles. So that's why a 6-mile hex is a good default distance to choose. But you can make them, you know, like I said, when you're making bigger maps, you can use a 24-mile hex. People use 12-mile hexes as a common size as well. But when you're thinking about how far people move in a day, you can move about 30 miles, 3 miles an hour times 10 miles of marching. So that seems like a good deal. And then one of the other things is when people are exploring a hex, they're not just, well, part of it is if they're traveling, they can just walk through a hex. And they can do that as fast as they can get through the terrain. But if people are exploring a hex, then they're wandering around in that area, and so they shouldn't be traveling all that far. And the bigger you make your hex, like if you're going on a 12-mile hex, that's a huge area that they're supposedly searching around in, versus like a 6-mile area, which isn't quite as big. Now, if people have horses, obviously they have the option to move even further. And what you do, like for the Trocare thing, Windhaven, it's easy enough to keep them from buying horses because nobody sent over any horses. So you have to wait until they find some kind of wild creature in the wild that can serve as a mount, and maybe then someone with handle animal actually has to teach it to be a mount. So there's a way built into that idea of Windhaven to limit how far the players can go. They're not able to get horses, so they can't set off in one direction as fast as possible. Part of the goal of the early levels in the game is for them to find a way to get a horse. Maybe they get, money and they're able to arrange for it to be brought over on one of the colony supply ships, or maybe they find, a chocobo because you've put chocobos in your world and they've managed to capture one and tame it or whatnot. So, yeah, there's different things what need be done. I have put so many things. I don't know how to move it without it adding a bunch of stuff. So then shapes, you can use the shapes thing to actually draw like areas and create borders. I don't know why this thing won't go down, but... And then text labels you can actually write on your maps. And then terrain, you know, here's a beach. Boop. Now we have a beach. Things like that. So, yeah, I like the hexographer. I have not used the new one as much as I've used the old one, and I didn't use the old one all that much yet, but it's on my list of stuff. So, yep. And then, like I said, there's that Angry DM Mega Dungeon article, which I'm still reading, because there's a bunch of them, and each of them is gigantic, and it takes a while to read. And then I'm still reading a bunch of information that I find on D&D blogs about hex crawls. You know, what kind of systems to put in place, what kind of things to keep in mind. But that even is... Like, I'm doing a lot of work and coming up with a lot of ideas, brainstorming. But if I find a gaming group that's going to come and play... It really also depends on what they want to do. I mean, there's no point in creating this hex crawl campaign if none of them are at all interested in hex crawling. If the thrill of, you know, walking from hex to hex and finding locations and delving into a mega dungeon doesn't interest them, and they want something more along the lines of like a standard Pathfinder or 5th edition adventure path kind of module where they're saving the world, well, then it's, you know, it's not going to work for them. So... You know, I don't want to put too much effort into it just yet. But I definitely do want to explore the whole kingdom building thing to see if that would work. Because then that would add... I feel like that adds a dimension to the game that people might be interested in. Because I've played that game and I liked it. I like... It's fun to come up with your own country. And having to negotiate with your fellow players as... They have their own interests in how they want the country to turn out, etc. But scaling it from kingdom building down more towards colony building in the early game. That'll be the question, is how quickly does Kingdom Builder or Kingmaker get you out of focusing on one city and into focusing on a country? Because I want to keep it at the city level for a while. All right, it is 3:15. I think I'm going to end it here for now. And yeah, I got some chores to do. I've got laundry in the washer right now, actually. I started the laundry right before I started the stream. So it would do me well to get that into the dryer. I am very happy you guys were able to show up and ask questions and offer comments. And I'm happy that my computer's working and I'm back online. So, like I said, I'm hoping to make some videos. There'll probably be some on the D&D side if I get an idea for it. And I'll find what I'm going to do for the other channel when I can. Because my video game playing has been a bit on the back burner for now with all the stuff that I mentioned at the beginning. All right, until next time, bye-bye.